Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. I stood in the doorway, the keys heavy in my palm, the weight of them a quiet reminder of what they represented: independence, a fresh start. All those years of being told what to do, what I should care about, and how I should live had finally led me to this moment. This little house that, while small, was all mine. No one could tell me what to put on the walls, how to arrange the furniture, or even what color the kitchen should be. I thought back to everything I'd fought for to get here: the late nights of work, the sleepless drives to meetings that always felt like a waste, and the tension in every conversation with my mom. Diane used to be my biggest cheerleader. She was the one who'd looked at me with pride when I chose design, when I'd pushed for more, dreamed bigger than anyone thought I could. But somewhere along the way, that pride turned to disappointment and then to indifference. I shook the thought away and stepped inside, the quiet air of the house settling around me. It was the first time in a long time that no one's voice, no one's demands filled the space. The silence felt almost too big, but in the best way. I could breathe here. I could think here. For the first time in years, this was mine. My space, my rules. I closed my eyes for a second, imagining the future. A comfortable couch, maybe a plant or two, pictures of friends, things that meant something. I wanted this place to feel full, not just of furniture, but of my life, of choices that I made. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And that, in itself, was enough. I set the keys down on the kitchen counter, the sharp clink of metal on ceramic oddly comforting. It was like a marker, a line in the sand. This was the first day of something new. I shoved the boxes of plates and glasses into cabinets with a little more force than necessary, the repetitive task grounding me, letting me forget, even for a minute, that the rest of the world felt like it was a million miles away. But then the quiet got too thick. The sound of my own breath felt too loud, and my mind started wandering. I couldn't stop the memories from creeping in. My mom, Diane, her face always glowing with pride when I first started pursuing design. The way she'd call me with excitement every time I had a new idea for a project. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when she was proud of me, when she cheered me on, even when the world seemed to push back on everything I did. I was her little girl, the one who'd finally figured it out. Then something shifted. Maybe it was when I started focusing on myself more than on them. Maybe it was when I began choosing my own path, my own projects, instead of trying to please everyone else. Whatever it was, it left a coldness between us, something that even her smile couldn't hide anymore. I remembered her calling me less, and when she did, the conversations felt like she was checking off a list. Are you happy? Are you still doing well? How's work? Then, nothing. Just silence. I grabbed my phone from the table, the screen lighting up with my mom's name. The temptation to call her was there, to tell her about the house, to share this moment, but I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the contact, and I suddenly knew it wouldn't make a difference. But I called anyway, just to hear her voice. She picked up on the third ring. "Hey, sweetie," she said, her tone a little too neutral. "How's it going?" "I'm good, Mom. Just wanted to let you know. I bought a house." "Really? That's great," she replied. It wasn't a lie, but it didn't sound like anything to get excited about either, just a passing comment. "Yeah," I said, my words almost empty now. "It's a little cottage-style place in a quiet neighborhood. I think it'll be perfect for me." That sounds nice. Well, I'm glad you're happy. Busy here, though. Can't talk much." I stared at the phone in my hand, the sudden drop in energy making me feel a little sick. "Okay, well, I'll talk to you soon." "Yeah, okay, take care." The line went dead, and I dropped the phone onto the couch. I tried, but it felt like I was trying to share something important with someone who didn't even know how to pretend to care anymore. It wasn't new. It was just the same hollow exchange we'd had for the past few years. I sat down, letting the silence fill the room. At first, I tried to push through it, to pretend that all the family gatherings, the invitations that got fewer and fewer, didn't hurt. But I could feel it: the distance, the way every family holiday had turned into something awkward, a forced formality. I'd show up, bring a dish, smile, but it felt like I wasn't part of them anymore, like I was just a guest in a life that used to be mine. I remembered the last family dinner where my mom barely acknowledged me. Everyone else acted like I wasn't even there. And I showed up early, stayed late, all for what? So they could pretend everything was okay? for the sake of some idealized image of family that had never existed? I stared at the boxes on the floor, the scattered clutter reminding me of how much I still had to do. The house still needed work, lots of it, but maybe that was the point. This was mine, nobody else's. This was where I'd start again. It didn't matter what my family thought. It didn't matter if they never cared enough to see me. I pushed back from the table, grabbed a stack of books, and started putting them on a shelf. The rhythm of it was simple, mindless. It was something to focus on, something I could control. There was no room in here for anyone else's expectations, not anymore. Just my own. And if that meant learning to let go of the people who never saw me for who I really was, then so be it. I was done trying to be what they wanted me to be. I'd spent enough years trying to make them proud, trying to fit into a mold they'd created for me. It was time to stop chasing something that wasn't ever going to come. The house was small, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like it was big enough to hold everything I needed: my future, my choices, and most of all, my peace. The message from Jeff came on a Sunday morning, completely out of the blue. "Hey Kelly, Mom's having a little get-together this weekend. Thought you might want to come by?" At first, I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. A get-together? Mom hadn't exactly been rolling out the welcome mat for me lately. But Jeff sounded casual about it, and I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this was a sign. Maybe they were finally ready to reconnect, to stop pretending that everything between us was fine when it wasn't. I took a deep breath and typed back, "I'll come by." After hitting send, I immediately regretted it. But by then, the decision had already been made, and the thought of maybe, just maybe, making things right gnawed at me. So I went to the store that afternoon. I picked out a bottle of wine. Nothing too fancy, but something I knew they'd appreciate. I also grabbed a couple of boxes of fresh pastries. My mom always liked those, especially the lemon tarts from the bakery downtown. I figured it'd be a nice touch, something to show I was still trying, even if it had been months since we'd last spoken. When I pulled up to her house on Saturday evening, my stomach dropped. The porch light was on, and the door was wide open, but it wasn't the quiet, small gathering I'd imagined. Music spilled out into the driveway, and voices, loud, boisterous, and unmistakably full of life, filtered through the cracks in the windows. This wasn't a small thing, not by a long shot. I parked my car and stared at the house for a long moment. I should have turned around. I should have just gone home and saved myself the trouble. But instead, I took a deep breath, grabbed the wine and pastries, and walked up to the door. The second I stepped inside, I knew I'd made a mistake. Mom was at the center of the chaos, greeting people with a big, forced smile. The place was packed. Cousins I hadn't seen in years, neighbors, some random friends of friends, everyone laughing and chatting. No one seemed to notice me at first. I stood there for a few beats, feeling the heat of the doorframe on my back, before finally making my way through the crowd. "Hi, Mom," I said, trying to sound casual, even though my heart was in my throat. I brought some wine and pastries. She turned, and for a split second, I saw the faintest flash of surprise in her eyes. Then she smiled, but it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile that says, "I'm doing this because I have to, not because she wanted to." "Oh, thanks, sweetie," she said, taking the bottle of wine and placing it on the counter without even looking at the pastries. And that was it. She didn't ask me how I was doing, didn't offer a hug or even a seat at the table. She just turned back to the crowd like I was just another guest she had to entertain. My stomach twisted. It wasn't even the coldness that hurt. It was the way she acted like everything was fine, like this big event was normal, like nothing had ever happened. I wandered around aimlessly, trying to make myself invisible in the corner. People passed by me, laughing, talking, acting like they belonged. I was just there, unnoticed. I thought maybe I could find a place to sit, maybe talk to someone, but no one seemed interested in talking to me. I saw Jeff across the room, laughing with a couple of friends, but he didn't even glance my way. I didn't expect a grand reunion, but the absence of even a simple acknowledgement made my chest tighten. The night dragged on. I watched my mom float around the room, playing the perfect hostess, and I realized then that it was always like this. She was so busy trying to hold the family together, trying to keep up appearances, that she couldn't see how far apart we'd become. I felt small, out of place. The wine and pastries were already forgotten, abandoned in the kitchen, and I couldn't stand being there anymore. I turned to leave before anyone could stop me. But just as I reached the door, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a post from my mom, a picture of the whole family. Posed perfectly, everyone smiling in their Sunday best, looking like the ideal happy family. A caption underneath it read, "Another perfect family dinner. So blessed to have everyone together." I froze. The sharp sting of humiliation hit me like a slap in the face. My mom had posted that for the world to see, like I wasn't even there, like I hadn't walked in, hadn't brought anything, hadn't tried at all. I stood there for a few seconds, feeling the weight of everything. My mother's distance, Jeff's indifference, the loneliness that had crept into every family gathering over the years. It all hit me at once. I didn't belong here, not anymore. I left without saying goodbye, without looking back. The cool night air hit my face, and I let the silence swallow me whole. I didn't have to check my phone to know what would come next. An apology text from Jeff, maybe a comment from Mom, but none of it mattered, not anymore. When I got home, I stared at the empty kitchen, the wine still in my bag, the pastries untouched. Everything I'd hoped for. The chance to feel seen again, to feel like I mattered, felt like it had been an illusion. I wasn't part of their perfect family. I hadn't been for a long time. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to let that go. I sat at the kitchen table, the dim light from the lamp above casting a soft glow over the wood, but it did nothing to ease the sting I felt. My phone sat in front of me, the screen still open to the picture my mom posted. The perfect family, posed and smiling. Everyone together, like nothing had changed. I stared at it for longer than I should have, my thumb brushing over the screen, trying to make sense of it. It was like looking at a ghost, a version of my family that wasn't mine anymore. In that photo, they weren't just smiling for the camera, they were smiling without me, like I didn't even matter. The tightness in my chest came back, sharper this time. But as I sat there, staring at that image of the family I thought I knew, something inside me clicked. It wasn't just the photo, it was everything. I'd spent so many years trying to be part of something that wasn't real, trying to squeeze myself into a family dynamic that never saw me as an individual. I'd always been just a piece of their puzzle, and no matter how hard I tried, I was never going to fit. I thought about all the holidays I'd arranged, all the dinners I'd hosted, the effort I'd put into making things feel like they used to. I'd always tried to make everyone happy, tried to recreate the warmth we once had, but it was never enough. They didn't appreciate it. They didn't see me. Not really. They saw what I could do for them, how I could keep things in place. But when it came to me, the person behind all of it, they barely even noticed. And then there was Dad, Jim. I thought about the year he started declining invitations, making excuses, slipping away without saying much. At first, I thought it was just him being tired, or maybe just fed up. But now I realized it was something deeper. He'd been pulling away, bit by bit, just like the rest of them. And I'd ignored it, tried to keep everything normal, hoping I could fix it. But I couldn't fix it. No one could. I felt the burn of anger rise in me, but it was different this time. It wasn't wild, uncontrollable. It was calm. Like the kind of clarity that comes after you've held your breath for too long and finally let it out. I wasn't angry because of the photo or because of the way they ignored me at the family get-together. I was angry because I kept chasing after people who didn't care, who treated me like an afterthought. But it wasn't just anger. There was something else too, a kind of finality. Like I was done pretending I was fine with it. Done pretending that the scraps of attention I got from them were enough. I'd spent years waiting for them to see me, for them to notice how hard I tried, but they never did. And I was tired of pretending it didn't matter, tired of convincing myself that if I just tried harder, they would come around. I pushed the phone aside and stood up, pacing around the kitchen for a moment, my mind racing. It was time for a change. I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need their validation. I had my house. I had my work. I had a future that was mine to create, not one shaped by expectations or their indifference. I'd been living for so long in their shadow, trying to fit into a family that didn't even see me. But that was done. I wasn't going to waste any more time trying to fix something that was never going to work. I wanted more for myself than that. I deserved more than that. The quiet of the house surrounded me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from pretending everything's fine. It was the peace that comes from finally accepting what is, from letting go of things that only hurt you in the end. I wasn't going to keep chasing a family that didn't want to be found. I wanted to build something real, something for me. I called Sam, the real estate agent, the next morning. I was ready. It wasn't a huge step, but it felt like one. and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of excitement. Hi, Sam. This is Kelly. I'm looking to move into a new place, and I'd love to start looking at houses. The relief in hearing someone else's voice felt almost grounding, like I was finally doing something that was just for me. He was friendly, professional, asked about my preferences, the neighborhood I wanted, and what I was looking for in a house. I told him I wanted something cozy, maybe a cottage style with a small garden, somewhere peaceful. I didn't need much, just enough room for my work, a place to call my own, to breathe. Over the next few weeks, I visited house after house. Some were too big, others too small. A few were in neighborhoods I didn't quite like, while some felt like they were full of promises that didn't quite fit. But each time I walked through one of them, I could feel myself getting closer, inch by inch, to the right place. I was getting better at imagining my life in these spaces, picturing what I could do with them. I was learning what I truly wanted. And then I found it, the house. It was a small cottage-style place tucked away in a peaceful corner of the neighborhood. The front yard was small, but had the kind of garden I could see myself tending to. The windows were big, letting in lots of light, and the interior was exactly what I had envisioned. Simple, clean lines, enough space for my work, and the occasional visitor. It wasn't perfect, but it felt right. I could already see my things inside it. My books, the little pieces of art I'd collected, the furniture I'd been dreaming of. It felt like the kind of place I could grow into. When I stood there in the middle of that living room, with the sunlight streaming through the windows, I had a moment. It was the kind of moment I'd only ever dreamed of. But it was real now. This wasn't just about the house. It was about everything I had worked for, the late nights spent building my career, the hurt I'd pushed through, the years of sacrifices I'd made just to keep moving forward. All of it had led me here, to this house, this new chapter. I didn't hesitate. I put in an offer the next day. Sam called me that afternoon. "They accepted," he said, his voice warm with good news. My heart skipped a beat. I'd done it. This was mine. The sense of freedom that washed over me was like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was overwhelming, yes, but there was peace in it too. I wasn't just buying a house. I was buying a break from everything that had held me back. I was saying goodbye to the people who had never really seen me, to the life I'd tried to make fit into a mold that wasn't mine. I walked around the house again the next day, slowly, taking everything in. The garden, the windows, the empty rooms that now felt like a blank canvas, waiting for me to make them my own. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders as I stood there, imagining what it would be like to fill this space with my own choices, my own life. I wasn't chasing anyone's approval anymore. This was for me. As I stood in the middle of the living room, I realized something. The years of trying to fix things with people who never truly understood me. The years of fighting to belong to a family that only saw me when it was convenient. That was all over. It had to be. I was done pretending. I was ready for this new beginning. This was mine. This house, this life. It was all mine, and no one could take that away from me. The moving boxes were stacked up high in the living room, a chaotic reminder of everything I'd just done. But instead of getting bogged down in sorting through them, I felt something different. A pull to do something that felt more like me than the usual stress of settling in. I called a few friends that afternoon, the ones who had actually stuck by me, the ones who had shown up when it mattered. These weren't people who looked at me like an afterthought or filled the space with polite chatter. These were people who made me laugh, who listened when I needed to vent, who didn't judge me when I was a mess. "Hey, it's Kelly," I said when Sarah, my college friend, picked up. "I'm having a little dinner at my place tonight. Want to come?" "I'd love to," she answered immediately. "What can I bring?" "Just yourselves," I said, grinning. "I've got wine, but if you feel like picking up dessert, I won't complain." She laughed, and the thought of having people around who weren't wrapped up in the drama of my family made me feel lighter. I called a few neighbors next, people I'd bonded with over the past few months, and then a couple of coworkers who were always down for good food and a good time. The guest list was small, just enough to fill the kitchen with chatter and warmth, but I knew it would be exactly what I needed. The evening came, and I stood in the kitchen, trying to finish the last-minute prep. I had the music playing softly, the table set, and everything ready to go. The smell of roasted vegetables and garlic hung in the air, mixing with the sound of people's laughter as they filtered into my home. No one was judging, no one was pretending, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The food was simple, but it didn't matter. It wasn't about the fancy meals or the perfect setting. It was about the people around me, people who cared about me, who didn't need to be reminded that I existed. There was no tension in the air, no invisible walls between us. Just real conversations and easy laughter, the kind that made my chest feel full in a way I hadn't experienced in too long. It felt like a home, not the house, but the people. This was what I'd always wanted. This is what a family could be. We ate, we joked, we talked about work, about life, and about the weirdest things that had happened over the past few months. It was effortless, and it was real. It wasn't forced or filled with shallow pleasantries. Everyone here was genuinely present, and I could feel it in the way we all connected. As the night stretched on, I found myself more relaxed than I had been in ages. This was my space now, filled with people who mattered, not the hollow noise of family gatherings that always left me empty. My home was no longer just walls and furniture. It was laughter. It was comfort. It was the feeling that I wasn't alone in this world. The evening was still going strong when my phone buzzed on the table, pulling my attention away from the conversation. I glanced at it. Mom. I hesitated for a split second, but only a split second. I knew it was probably about the family get-together, some last-ditch attempt at trying to make me feel guilty for not being there. I didn't want to hear it. Not tonight. Not when I was surrounded by people who actually cared. I silenced the call, setting my phone back down without even thinking twice. The sound of my mom's voice, the tension in every conversation we'd had over the past few years, wasn't what I needed in this moment. I was done pretending. I wasn't going to apologize for needing space. I wasn't going to explain myself to anyone who hadn't even bothered to notice when I was trying to be someone I wasn't. My family was a weight I was no longer willing to carry. The party continued, the music louder now, people dancing and talking with no need for perfection. And I realized for the first time in a long time that this was where I belonged. Not in the house I grew up in, not with the people who barely made room for me, but here in this small cottage, surrounded by friends who made me feel seen, who understood that I didn't have to be perfect to be worthy. As the night wore on, I sank into the couch, listening to the sounds of my true family, laughter, easy conversation, the clinking of glasses, and I knew deep down this was where I was meant to be. I didn't need to answer to anyone who had never truly shown up for me. This was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at home. A few days after the party, when the noise of it had died down, and I'd spent the last few nights just soaking in the quiet of my new home, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I knew who it was the second I heard the knock. Sharp, tentative, like she wasn't sure if I'd even let her in. I took a deep breath before I stood up and crossed the room. When I opened the door, there she was, my mother, Diane. Her posture was stiff, like she was trying to keep the air of control, but I could see it. The slight tightness in her face, the edge of discomfort that couldn't be hidden. She wasn't here because she wanted to be. She was here because she had to be. "Hi," she said, voice clipped. "Can I come in?" I didn't rush to invite her in. I didn't feel like making her feel welcome, like I used to. I stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking at her. "Sure," I finally said, stepping aside but not moving too far. "Come in." She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room quickly, probably checking to see if I had any signs of disaster or chaos in this new life I'd built for myself. But she said nothing about the place. She just folded her arms across her chest, looking at me. "I've been getting some questions from the family," she started, the words coming out a little too fast. "They're wondering why you haven't been to any of the recent gatherings. They're worried you're cutting them off." I didn't say anything right away. I just let her talk. She wasn't here to check in on me. She was here because I was the problem, because I was the one who had the nerve to make them uncomfortable. "I'm not cutting anyone off," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But I'm done making all the efforts when no one cares to meet me halfway." Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. "I don't know what you mean by that. We've all been busy, you know that." "No," I said, shaking my head slowly. "I don't know that. What I do know is that for the last few years, I've been the one trying to keep everything together. I was the one calling, inviting, showing up. And every single time, I got the same thing in return. Distance, silence, indifference." She opened her mouth to say something, but I didn't let her. "I've done everything I could," I went on, my voice getting a little sharper now, a little more firm. "I've shown up, I've kept trying, and it's always the same. You guys don't care. You're all too busy. You don't even notice when I'm trying to make things work. So, you know what?" I stopped. Her face flushed a little and she took a step back, as if my words had physically hit her. I could see the shock in her eyes. She wasn't used to hearing me talk this way. She wasn't used to me standing my ground. "You don't mean that," she said quietly, her voice wavering just a little. I didn't care if it hurt her. "Yes, I do." I didn't raise my voice, but there was a quiet intensity behind my words. For years, I've been doing everything for this family. But I've realized something. I don't have to keep giving if no one's willing to meet me halfway. I'm done trying to get something from people who've never really been there. Her eyes dropped to the floor like she was looking for something to say but couldn't find the right words. I didn't feel sorry for her, though. I watched her, waiting for her to say something else. She opened her mouth again, like she was going to apologize or offer some excuse, but I couldn't listen to it anymore. I didn't need her to tell me that she was too busy or that I should just understand how difficult things had been for her. I didn't need the same empty promises. I had heard it all before. "I'm not going to keep pretending," I said more firmly now. "I've tried, but you guys never showed up for me, and I can't keep waiting around for something that's never going to happen." She took a deep breath, visibly struggling with my words. I could see the hurt on her face, but there was nothing left in me to soften it. She hadn't softened the years of distance, the constant rejection, the times I'd hoped for something different and only been met with silence. She swallowed, her lips pressed together, and finally looked up at me, the weight of what I'd said hanging between us. "I didn't realize you felt this way," she said, her voice soft now, almost too quiet. "Maybe you never really wanted to know," I replied. The words stung, but it was the truth. It wasn't all her fault, but she'd been part of it. Part of the silence, the distance. She didn't respond. She just stood there, arms still folded tightly, as if unsure of what to do with herself in my space. I couldn't bring myself to say anything else. I wasn't going to apologize for speaking my truth. I wasn't going to pretend things could go back to the way they were. After a long pause, she nodded, a tight, strained gesture, and turned to leave. "I'll go," she said, her voice quieter than before. I didn't move, didn't try to stop her. I just watched as she left, closing the door behind her softly. And in the silence that followed, I realized something. I had finally stopped chasing people who would never care enough to see me. I had stopped pretending that their distance didn't hurt. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet peace settle inside me, like a weight had been lifted that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. I was done, and that was enough. For the next few days, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Every time it rang, I felt a knot form in my stomach. Jeff, Dad, texts from random relatives I hadn't heard from in months, all of them reaching out, wondering what happened, asking if I was okay, if I was coming back. I let it ring. I couldn't bring myself to pick up. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew exactly what they'd say, what they'd try to convince me of. They'd ask if I was sure, tell me I'd overreacted, try to make me feel guilty for setting a boundary. But I wasn't about to back down, not this time. The messages piled up. I could feel the pressure building. But I stayed firm, choosing to let the silence sit there instead of engaging in the same tired conversations. Then, on the fourth day after the confrontation, my phone rang again. This time, it was Aunt Marie. She'd always been different from the rest of the family. She was the one who treated me like a friend, who actually saw me for who I was, not just as another part of the family to manage or check off a list. I almost didn't answer, but something in me softened. I picked up. "Kelly, it's Marie," she said, her voice gentle, but there was an edge of concern. "I just wanted to check in. I heard about the conversation with Diane." I didn't say anything right away. I just listened. "I know things have been difficult," she continued, her voice hesitating, "but I just wanted you to know, the rest of the family is starting to notice the distance. They're questioning things. Some are even pulling away from Diane." I felt a small, hollow laugh rise in my chest. The realization hit me all at once. My absence had made them reconsider their own complacency. They were starting to see what I'd known for years. The family wasn't the perfect unit they tried to make it out to be. It was all smoke and mirrors. "They're starting to see it?" I said, my voice dry. "Funny how that happens when I stop pretending, huh?" Marie paused, unsure of how to respond, but then she sighed, resigned. "I get it, Kelly. I really do. I've watched you pour so much into trying to keep everything together, only to be left out in the cold. But it's hard. You know how Diane is. She can't see past her own version of things. She'll never understand, but maybe the rest of us can." I don't need anyone to understand anymore, I said quietly. It felt like a weight was lifting just saying it out loud. I've spent so long trying to make them see me, but they never did, and I'm done. Marie didn't argue. She just let the silence fill the space between us. I could hear the rustling of papers in the background, the faint hum of the world still going on as I stood there, letting my words hang in the air. You've always been stronger than they gave you credit for, she finally said, her voice steady. But don't let Diane make you feel like you're the one in the wrong. I'm here for you. And I think maybe it's time for you to start living for you. I closed my eyes, feeling the truth of her words sink in. For so long, I had lived for other people, my family's expectations, their approval, their version of what I should be. I'd spent years trying to fit into a mold they'd created, and in the process, I'd lost myself. But no more. The realization didn't sting like it used to. It wasn't a sharp, angry ache anymore. It was more of a quiet, steady relief. It was like breathing after holding your breath for far too long. I think you're right, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's time for me to do something different. Time for me to stop worrying about them, about their expectations. There was a long pause, then Aunt Marie sighed softly. I'm proud of you, Kelly. I know it's not easy, but you're doing the right thing. Thanks, Aunt Marie, really. I meant it. Her words felt like a blanket, like a soft reassurance I hadn't realized I needed until now. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room for a while. The phone still sat on the table in front of me, buzzing every now and then with messages I wouldn't answer. I didn't feel any rush to check them. They could wait. I took a deep breath and looked around my new home. My home? The space was quiet, warm, and full of potential. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. It was a place where I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't. And for the first time in a long time, the weight of the past started to feel lighter. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on people who couldn't see me for who I was. The future stretched out in front of me, and I realized I had the freedom to build it however I wanted. No more carrying the weight of expectations, no more pretending to be part of something that never truly valued me. I was free to finally be myself. And that was the most powerful thing I had ever felt. The evening of my 30th birthday was exactly what I had wanted. Simple, relaxed, and full of people who actually cared. The backyard of my new home was alive with conversation, the warm glow of fairy lights hanging from the trees above casting a soft light on everything. The smell of grilled food mingled with the scent of fresh-cut grass, and I couldn't help but feel like I had finally built something real. My chosen family, the people who had stuck by me, friends from college, my neighbors, and coworkers who knew how to make me laugh until my stomach hurt, were all there. The sound of their voices, the clinking of glasses, and the easy rhythm of the night filled me with a kind of peace I hadn't realized I'd been missing. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged. I looked around the table, at all the faces, and I realized something. I didn't need the approval of my biological family anymore. Their absence was no longer an ache in my chest, but a reminder that I had created something so much better. I had filled this space with the people who truly understood me, who accepted me without question. This was the family I had chosen, and it felt so much stronger than anything I'd ever been a part of before. There was a cake in front of me, decorated simply with candles flickering in the soft breeze. I couldn't help but smile as I looked at it. I'd never been one for big celebrations, but this felt like the perfect way to mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Make a wish, someone called out, and I did, though not the wish I would have made in the past. I didn't wish for things or people to be different. I didn't wish for any kind of validation. I just wished for more moments like this, moments that felt right, where I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I blew out the candles, the small puff of air a release, like letting go of everything that had held me back. The crowd cheered, and I felt a swell of something I hadn't felt in years: contentment. I sat back in my chair, letting the warmth of the night settle in. There was no bitterness, no lingering pain from the past. The things that used to hurt, my family's coldness, their inability to see me for who I really was, had faded into the background, replaced by something real and meaningful. I'd learned that family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up for you, who made you feel valued, and I'd finally found that. I'd built a life that reflected who I truly was, a life that was mine. That was worth more than anything my biological family could offer me. As the evening wore on, The laughter continued, the music played softly in the background, and I felt the weight of the past lift off my shoulders. This wasn't just a birthday, it was a celebration of everything I had overcome, everything I had worked for. I knew deep down that this was just the beginning. Whatever came next, I was ready. I had built this life on my own terms, and I wasn't going to let anything or anyone take it away from me. For the first time in years, I felt complete. I smiled to myself, knowing that I had everything I needed to face the future, whatever it held.